David Lammy's political career may have just ended with one reckless moment. Britain's Deputy Prime Minister, a man known for his sharp rhetoric, compared Nigel Farage to the Hitler Youth during a press event, a statement so inflammatory that it sent shockwaves through every corner of British politics. Within hours, the story dominated headlines, talk shows, and social media. The country's immigration debate didn't just flare up, it detonated. The exchange that triggered this firestorm seemed, at first, routine. Lammy faced a simple question from a journalist. "Do you believe Nigel Farage is racist?" Most politicians would have deflected or delivered a polished non-answer. Instead, Lammy charged straight into disaster. In front of cameras, he claimed that Farage had once flirted with the Hitler Youth while at school, effectively comparing one of Britain's most recognizable political figures to a Nazi sympathizer. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Commentators across the political spectrum condemned the remark. Even journalists who typically gave Labour the benefit of the doubt asked, incredulously, "Did he really just say that?" In a political culture that treats Nazi comparisons as the ultimate taboo, Lammy had just crossed the line you never cross, unless you can prove it. And he couldn't. Farage, on the other hand, didn't even blink. He called the accusation utter nonsense and carried on with his day. It was a deliberate move, the posture of someone who knows outrage only fuels his popularity. For years, Farage has thrived on being the target of establishment attacks. Every insult reinforces his message that Britain's political elite are out of touch, arrogant, and terrified of voices they can't control. And for millions of voters watching, Lammy's outburst didn't make Farage look extreme. It made him look vindicated. They saw a government so threatened by dissent that it resorted to the ugliest insult imaginable. Instead of discrediting Farage, Lammy handed him proof of everything he's been saying for a decade. But the real humiliation came 2 days later, when Lammy reappeared in front of the press, this time looking less like the confident Deputy Prime Minister and more like a man in freefall. His tone was subdued, his body language defensive. Gone was the bravado, in its place an attempt at damage control. "Nigel Farage has denied the claim," Lammy said, "and I accept that denial. I would like to clarify my position." That single word, clarify, was political code for "I made a catastrophic mistake." What followed was worse. Lammy admitted he hadn't been at school with Farage and had no first-hand knowledge of what he was talking about. "I don't know what songs he sang," he confessed. In other words, Britain's Deputy Prime Minister had compared a rival to the Hitler Youth based on hearsay. The reaction was swift. Commentators accused Lammy of recklessness and arrogance. Critics on both sides of the aisle said he'd undermined the credibility of the office he held. And even within Labour's own ranks, there was quiet fury that a senior figure had handed Reform UK, Farage's party, a propaganda victory of historic proportions. Then came the knockout blow. At the next press conference, reporters turned to Prime Minister Keir Starmer and demanded to know whether he agreed with Lammy's comments. Starmer's answer stunned the political establishment. Calmly, he said, "No, I do not believe Nigel Farage is racist. Nor do I think Reform UK voters are racist. They're simply concerned about our borders." The statement might have sounded moderate, even reasonable, but politically, it was devastating. In one sentence, Starmer dismantled the central pillar of Labour's strategy. For years, his party had dismissed Reform UK supporters as intolerant or hateful. Now, in front of the cameras, he'd admitted what millions of working-class voters had been saying all along, that they weren't racists, just citizens worried about immigration and security. For Labour, it was a nightmare. The moral high ground they had built their brand on vanished overnight. The message that once united their base, that opposition to mass immigration was rooted in prejudice, collapsed. Reform UK, long painted as a fringe movement, suddenly looked legitimate, and Farage's rhetoric about establishment hypocrisy gained undeniable weight. Political analysts called it a strategic implosion. In one press cycle, Labour had alienated progressives who wanted the party to stand firm while simultaneously empowering Farage by proving his point. Reform UK's social media accounts immediately pounced, posting clips of Starmer's comment with captions like, "Even he admits we're not racist." And just like that, the entire conversation around immigration shifted. What had been dismissed as populist grievance now sounded like mainstream concern. Labour's decades-long playbook, brand the opposition as hateful, frame the debate as moral rather than practical, had failed. For Farage, it was an extraordinary turn of fortune. He didn't need to respond, retaliate, or gloat. The establishment had done the work for him. His political enemies had just handed him the single most valuable piece of ammunition imaginable: their public confession that they'd been wrong all along. The fallout left the government looking divided, defensive, and hypocritical, and Farage looking like the calm, consistent alternative. And just when it seemed Labour couldn't sink any lower, Starmer made another unforced error days later, this time when he was asked about Donald Trump. That, as you'll see next, is where the real collapse began. David Lammy thought he could destroy Nigel Farage with one reckless insult. Instead, he's torn open the biggest crisis of Labour's leadership yet. Because just when it seemed the backlash couldn't get any worse, Keir Starmer made it worse himself. It happened days later at another press conference. A reporter brought up a comment made by the US president, who had claimed that London was heading towards Sharia law. The question was simple: do you think that statement is racist? Starmer's answer stunned the room. He said, "I'm not going to start down the road of discussing whether things said by others are racist or not." That single sentence exposed everything wrong with the government's double standards. When Nigel Farage, a British politician representing millions of voters, says something that challenges Labour's immigration policies, they brand him dangerous, even liken him to Nazis. But when the American president makes a sweeping comment about Britain's capital city, suddenly Labour finds restraint. Suddenly, we don't comment. But while the headlines focused on Lammy's meltdown and Starmer's contradictions, something even bigger and darker was happening behind the scenes. Labour quietly advanced plans for a mandatory digital ID system across the UK. Officially, they claimed it was about security, stopping illegal work and tightening border enforcement. But critics immediately called it what it looked like: a massive surveillance overreach. If passed, every citizen would be tracked and logged through a centralised digital identity system. Supporters call it modernisation. Opponents call it control. Because here's the reality: Labour still can't secure the borders. Channel crossings continue daily. They can't stop the flow of illegal immigration. But instead of fixing the problem, they're proposing to monitor you. Nigel Farage's long-standing warning has come true. Britain's leaders, unable to control illegal migration, are turning their surveillance on ordinary citizens instead. Across the country, voters are fed up with being branded racists for demanding secure borders and with politicians who preach integrity but bend under pressure. David Lammy's failed attack on Farage only exposed the establishment's hypocrisy and fear, and in doing so, gave Farage his most powerful weapon yet. The more they try to discredit him, the stronger he grows. Britain's political establishment just played its own downfall, and Nigel Farage didn't have to lift a finger. One insult exposed the hypocrisy, one apology confirmed the fear, and one silence from the people is now turning into a roar. This isn't the end of the story, it's the start of a reckoning.